Hello everyone out in movie land. I'm going to talk to you today about MLA formatting for citing and documenting your sources and why it's so important and how to do it. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is how MLA formatting is like a game. Think about a football game or a soccer game or any kind of sports. You have a rule book and you have to play by the rules. Think about soccer. If somebody kicks the ball out the sideline, the rule is that the opposing team gets to throw it in. Or if you take somebody down who's going for a goal, the person or the team who's going for the goal gets a penalty kick, right? So there are minor offenses and then there are very major offenses. And there are some major offenses when it comes to not playing by the rules with MLA guidelines for citing and documenting your sources. You can get kicked out of the game. You can get a red card if you don't play by the rules and you don't cite your sources. So it's very important. It's not just a formatting guideline. It's that too, but it's also a very serious set of rules that must be adhered to. Okay, so the first thing you need to know about MLA guidelines and how to cite and document is that it plays by the rule of one-to-one correspondence. And what that means is whenever you borrow an idea or words, word for word, from an outside source or from another author, you must give credit to that source. You do it, okay, you can see that there on the screen here, there is a sample essay open. You do it with an in-text citation for the particular idea that you are borrowing. And you then provide the publication information in the work cited for that particular idea. Okay, so one-to-one means you cite the source in text, and then you have a corresponding works cited entry in the works cited page with all the publication information for anyone who would like to investigate that further. So every single idea, whether you put it in your own words or you quote it or you do a combination of both, must have a corresponding works cited entry. And likewise, everything that's in your works cited list must have a corresponding in-text citation. So how do we do in-text citations first of all? MLA requires that you use a parenthetical citation that includes an author's last name and a page number. So when I say parenthetical citation, what I'm talking about is parentheses, such as this right here. Now you can see that this is not an author, or maybe you don't know that that's not an author, but let's look at this one, Schmid, author's last name, and this is a page number. There's no P dot, there's nothing else, it's just the number. So if we go to, if we go to the works cited, you will see in alphabetical order here is Schmid. This is how we can find it. Very easy to trace it from the place where the idea was borrowed to here because it's in alphabetical order with the author's last name. Okay, so what happens if there is no author? Sometimes we know we cite from web sources occasionally, such as here. Notice that it's in quotation marks. That means that it is an article title. So there is no author for this one, so let's look for Ted Bundy. Also, it's in alphabetical order, and here it is. You can see there's no author name, but there is an article named Ted Bundy. I don't think there's any other articles in here. These are all, yeah, these are all authored articles. Okay, so there are two different, so I said you have to have a parenthetical citation, meaning in parentheses, but that's not the only way that you can format your in-text citation. Sometimes we introduce it in our own sentence. Let me see if I can find one. Here it is. Okay, sometimes we introduce it in our own sentence. And MLA actually, it works better sometimes, I think, to have it in your own sentence in a signal phrase. In other words, you introduce the author in your sentence and then go ahead and relate the idea or quote the quote or do a combination of both. You could see that that's what happened here. Okay, this is there's no quoting in here. But you can see researchers Amanda M. Vickery and Chris Frawley confirmed this theory with a study that found that 71% of women preferred a true crime book that mentioned specific escape tactics over one that did not. Similarly, 65% of women preferred a book that described a killer's motives over one that did not. Notice that in parentheses is only a page number. That's because this writer already used the author names in her own sentence in what we call a signal phrase, which introduces the idea. Notice that Vickery and Frawley are going to be in alphabetical order, Vickery and then Frawley. All right, so that's how we find it. Again, the only thing that was in parentheses is the page number. I actually prefer if you use signal phrases whenever possible, because it makes the distinction between what you're saying and what an author is saying much more clear, especially if you're paraphrasing. Because sometimes people or students will just slap on a parenthetical citation after a sentence and then another sentence, or there's an entire paragraph with no parenthetical citations and just one at the very end. It should only mean, that parenthetical citation, that last idea in that sentence, that last sentence, came from that source that you're citing. But some students get confused by that and think everything I just said in that paragraph is attributed to that source. But that's not how we do documentation and citing of sources. Okay, so that's a parenthetical in-text citation and or a signal phrase. So remember author last name. If there's no author at all, then we go to the next thing. In the next item in the in the publication information, which is the article name, right? So we know that in this case, let's go back up here, Ted Bundy was the name of an article. So that gets alphabetized along with the other author last names. All right, so now we're going to talk about works cited. Works cited, two things, formatting and then content. So the way that we format works cited is we start with a title, works cited. There's no fancy featuring, bolding, it's not larger, it's not underlined, nothing. It's just the words works cited and it's centered. Okay, notice that the entire thing is double spaced. That means one blank line between each line of text, no extra blank lines between each entry. This is called a hanging indent. So you just go through and type, and then you can highlight, go up into, I know there's a control thing you can do at the beginning of each line, but I have not used that, so I'm going to do it the way that I know and show you that, which is, shoot, what is that? I think it's insert. No, it's paragraph. Okay, so you go up into the paragraph tab and you hit that little tiny arrow and you'll see indentation and you'll see special. It's already on hanging, but if you do the drop down before you do the hanging indent, probably none will be highlighted, so you want to highlight hanging, you hit OK, and then it turns into this. A hanging indent is when the first line of each entry is at the margin and all the other subsequent lines are indented, opposite of a paragraph. This is what MLA calls for, this is what we do. Okay, also it is alphabetized. That is something you have to do on your own. Word will not do it for you, as far as I know. In terms of content, the way that MLA works is if there's an author, you always use the author's last name, comma, first name, period. If there are any other names, author names, sometimes there's more than one author, there's co-authors, you will list them first name, then last name. Okay, here's one right here. Vickery, right? That's her last name, Amanda M, comma, and R. Chris Frawley. So I wanted to say Farley, but that's Frawley. Anyway, if there were more author names, they would also be first name, last name. The only one that gets inverted is the very first one because we want to go by the alphabet. Okay, after the author name, then comes the title of the piece, whatever it is. Sometimes most of the time there are article names that we're working with, but sometimes if you quote like the source of a photo, it might be the title of that photo or the caption. So here's the title. Then comes, okay, the way that MLA talks about these publications is by container 1 and container 2. So container 1 usually is a publication itself, like the name of a journal or the name of a magazine. And then if there's any volume and issue numbers, they come, and then page numbers. Then we do, before page numbers comes publication date. Now notice that she has accessed here, the date that she accessed the source. That is no longer required by MLA. It's not a crime if you put it in. If you do, that's fine. So after the first container and the volume and issue numbers comes the publication date, then the page numbers, and then comes container number 2. And in many cases, what container number 2 is going to involve is, for you, I don't think she has it in here. No, she does. Okay. The database name, ProQuest Central, Academic Search Complete, whatever it is. And then the source locator, which can be, now here this is the source locator. Sometimes it's a DOI or a permalink. And you can find that actually in the, when you do a search and you find the source that you want, and there's a lot of publication information before you actually click on the source and get to it, usually a permalink or DOI will be on that return page. Okay, so that is pretty much it for MLA formatting for citing and documenting your sources. And again, you have to play by the rules of the game. I'm telling you this now because it's important for the rest of the semester. You are going to be graded on the formatting and using these guidelines for citing and documenting your sources, and you will get penalties just like in a game if you do not adhere to them. They're very important for good scholarship and ethical scholarship, because if we don't carefully document our sources, then we are not playing by the rules of the game and we will be penalized. The ultimate penalty, as you know, is plagiarism, and that can mean first offense, getting a 0 for whatever paper that you plagiarized in, and it can gradually escalate to being expelled from school. So be very, very careful. Look at chapter 20 in your St. Martin's Guide to Writing textbook, the short 12th edition. If you have any questions and you are unsure, always ask me and I will help you. There are plenty of resources both in the book, on the Purdue OWL website, and on, of course, the ultimate resource if you really can't find what you're looking for. So over and out. If you have any questions, please let me know.